You've been a leader in trying to combat a lot of the junk science on global warming. Where do we go from here?
Well, Michelle, let's go back first. When I became chairman, when the Republicans were a majority, and I was chairman of the Environment and Public Works Committee of the Senate, that was 4.5 years ago. And at that time, I assumed that it was true that man-made gases were causing climate change until the econometric survey came out saying what it would cost if we signed on to the Kyoto Treaty. And it came out to be $2,700 for each family of 4. Now that's been upgraded since then, and it's considerably more than that. So we started looking at the science only to find out that science just isn't there. And they all assumed it was, and it all, like most bad things that come to America, it all came from the United Nations, the IPCC.
Right.
They were the ones that came out with the idea that man-made gases were causing climate change. Then Al Gore put his whole career on the line, thinking this is his ticket to the White House to be able to say that he's the leader in this thing. And so he came out with this science fiction movie and the rest of the story. But what's happening now? I didn't want to get into that in much detail, but where we are with it right now. I had kind of a 3-hour confrontation, and most of it was televised, with Al Gore. And during this thing, I showed the scientists what they really said about this, what his motivation was. And it wasn't until I started naming names of scientists that were his leaders. For example, I talked about Claude Allegre in France. Well, all of a sudden he thought, wait a minute, he was on my side. Now he's on Inhofe's side on this thing. And David Bellamy from UK and Nir Shaviv from Israel. And that's when I saw little beads of sweat started coming down, because he realized that those people who had been on the other side of the issue 10 years ago and even more recent than that are now realizing the science just flat isn't there. The best thing was the 60 scientists that advised the Prime Minister of Canada. They're the ones who advised the Prime Minister of Canada to get on Kyoto, sign on, ratify it way back in 97, late 90s sometime. Those same 60 now say, if we had known then what we know now about the science, they would not have ratified it, it wouldn't be necessary. And they're admonishing Prime Minister Harper now not to get on the new Kyoto Treaty. Right. So we're winning that thing clearly, but if we didn't win this thing, we just sat back and let this thing happen, I have 20 kids and grandkids that would end up paying a tax increase that would equate to 12 times the amount of the largest tax increase in recent history, which was the 1993 Clinton-Gore tax increase.
Right.
So anyway, the science is mixed. It's on both sides. However, the one thing that's not confused is what it would cost the American people.
Right. Now, you've been pilloried by a lot on the far left for exposing the truth about the global warming hoax. And you talk about money. There are a lot of moneyed interests there that have a huge stake in silencing your voice and silencing the voices of heretical scientists and economists. How do you fight that?
Well, you remember when Heidi Cullum, who has that weekly show on the Weather Channel, she came out and she said that and this is a statement that she made, any meteorologist who doesn't agree essentially with Heidi Cullum in global warming should be decertified by the American Society of Meteorologists. Well, I did an op-ed piece. I think it ended up in the Wall Street Journal or someplace, and Drudge picked it up, and you guys picked it up. And as a result of that, we had so many hits on the Senate website, 30 to 50,000 an hour, that they had to shut down the Senate website, all on my side of this issue.
Right.
So those people are out there. So you get your Hillarys and the rest of the people running for president. They are really in a box, because they know that people are catching on now, and they have all been extreme in this position. And if they vary to any degree at all, they'll lose the funding from the far left, and then they're out of luck in this campaign.
Right. Now, unfortunately, there are some Republicans who are members of the global warming cult. And
politicians are all afraid of them.
Yeah. Yeah, we had Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example, over the weekend tell the California Republican Party that they should adopt a more centrist stance by accepting the global warming hoax and going along with whatever carbon tax increase or whatever other tax increases he thinks are
Well,
necessary.
when you stop and think about it, Michelle, most of that stuff, I said it started with the United Nations, but then it was picked up by the Hollywood elitists. And everyone I run into, not everyone, there's we get a lot of email from people in California saying, we're not all like Barbara Boxer, we're not all like the Hollywood elitists, but there are some good normal people out there. But I would just guess that Arnold Schwarzenegger, in looking at the polling that takes place in California, probably feels politically he doesn't have a choice. It's too bad because
he's a true believer, because he sure comes off, the zeal comes off that way.
Well, you know, people just don't, they refuse to listen. Now, what do you do if you don't have the truth on your side, you don't have logic on your side, you don't have the science on your side, you resort to name calling, you resort to threats and intimidation, like Heidi Cullen did to the meteorologist. And consequently, not many people in public office in the United States Senate or House are willing to stand up against that. And I have to say, for the first 4 years I was in this battle, it was awfully lonely because I was the only one. Right. But now, clearly, we are winning. People know the truth is out there. And I'm preparing right now to do another 2-hour speech on the floor of the Senate, which I'll do more than once. The first hour is going to be bringing us up to date, and the second hour is going to be just on the changes that have taken place in terms of the science and the discovery of the cost in the last 6 months. And as I see these, my members, the members of the Senate will come up to me and say, do you have the documentation for that? And I give it to them. So I think we have a majority of people in the Senate who are not going to allow the current bills, there are 2 bills, global warming bills, to pass. It wasn't long ago when I was doing it, I guess it was John Kerry. John Kerry got 2.5 hours to debate an amendment putting global warming on what they call the WRDA bill, which is the Water Resources Development Act. Has nothing to do with global warming, but he was going to put it on. He had an hour and 2.5 hours. So I said, good, I'll take half of that time. I went down, we debated for 2.5 hours, and toward the very last, he was not aware of something that happened that very day. MIT had come out with a report with new figures as to how much it would cost in order to comply with those 2 new bills that were going to be introduced in the Senate. And it wasn't $2,700 for each family of 4, it was $4,500. So I said, well, Senator Kerry, you have kind of an innocuous institution in your state of Massachusetts called MIT. What do you think? Oh, they are just, so their research is impeccable, and I said, let me read what they just said today.
Right.
So anyway, as these things come out, people are realizing that this religion called global warming, yes, the northern hemisphere is going through natural variance right now that's warming. There's no question about that. But more and more they're saying there are other reasons for it. One is, you better hold on when I say this, it's the sun. Can you believe it?
Most recently, there were a number of bloggers who were involved in climate change and meteorology, and they discovered that NASA had a glitch in some of its statistics, that there was a year 2000 bug, and when they redid the analysis with the right statistics, it pushed most of the highest temperature years to World War II levels. So clearly the whole anthropomorphic rationale or blaming for global warming has been undermined and undermined every day.
The fact that the man-made gases, CO2, methane, anthropogenic gases, that's where it's wrong. But you mentioned NASA. The guy that I run into on these debates on talk radio more than anybody else is James Hansen.
Right.
James Hansen was paid $250,000 in cash by the Heinz Foundation. And I think he'd say almost anything he wanted them to say anyway. So lots of money in this thing.
Follow the money.
Yeah, follow the money.